Great, okay. So you've already heard who I am. So I'm talking about what's new, devices and technologies. So this is my conflict of interest. I'm a proctor for St Jude Medical. So I'm going to start off with my first question. My first slide is going to be a question. So how many of you have greater than one LAA occluder in your practice? So if you want to change that to your question slide so we can get our... have you done that? Excellent. So it's 1 for yes and 2 for no. So that means if you have more than one LAA occlusion device in your practice, that's a 1. Okay, so we can get the results on that. So there's a small majority of people who have more than one device in their practice. So that means that there's interest in additional devices. We're not one device people. Okay, so can we go back to my slides now, please? Super. So my question then to you is one of, aside from working in the hospital, I do a lot of work with device development. So my first question to you is are great devices created, or do they actually evolve? What's the method of development of a great device? So let's have a very quick historical look and say coronary stent. So did we come up with the perfect coronary stent first shot? No, we worked on strike thickness, we worked on drugs, which drug, polymer, biodegradability, and as we move on, we're reaching what we believe to be an ultimate device. Probably was always at the penultimate device, but we're moving towards that. With TAVI, so certainly with the Edwards valve, we saw that we were at 24 French when we started with the Cribbier valve, Sapien XT, then we went on to the Sapien 3. So each time there was a development, same with the Medtronic valve, core valve progressing to the Evolute. ACP came on to become the Amulet as we progress further ahead. Watchman with its step towards the Flex, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So most devices undergo multiple iterations before they actually settle in the market. So we're not really talking about straight out the creation of the ultimate device. So what's new? So in terms of new devices that I'm going to be able to share with you in the field of left atrial appendage occlusion, not very much. There's not really very much happening at the moment of a brand new device. However, in terms of current devices with iterant changes, I can give you an update, and we'll talk about 5 devices: the Aquatech device, the LAA Occluder of Occlusion, Lifetech Lambra, the Coerix, which is Biosense Webster, Wave Crest, Cardia, excuse me, ultraseal, and the Watchman Flex. So let's start out with the Aquatech LAA Occluder. So this is a device that looks a bit like a wizard's hat, I guess, or a top hat, really, and it's different to a lot of the other devices that we've seen. It's got a complete cover. It's got short loops, as you can see. A little bit difficult to get actually all the way across here. So there's short loops that are supposed to be retainers, and it's got the Occlusion characteristic flex hub, so it's held on by like a forceps rather than a screw. And this was the device that was the first iteration that came out and looked very attractive. So the Occlusion trial, which was actually presented, this is so the TCT data. Initial phase with 11 patients, there were some embolizations, went back, had a redesign, figured the way to solve this was increased radial force. So then along came phase 2 with third generation device. And at TCT up till October 2016, there were 69 of 105 patients had been enrolled. So the results showed that there was good technical success in terms of deployment. There was pericardial effusion. That's not uncommon in most of the devices. There was device embolization in 2 devices, and then there was an asterisk that said there were another 4 embolizations in commercial cases, and that there was thrombus in the device of 4. There was complete seal at 30 days in only 46 out of 51 cases, or perhaps not only, but in 46 of 51 cases. So there was at 30 days, there was probably a 10% residual leak. So if we look at those embolizations, that's a little bit troubling. And then at the same time, at the end of September, Occlusion came out with an urgent field notice saying we're writing to inform you that the product problem has been identified and that we're asking you to take immediate action. The device was withdrawn and the patients were asked to be assessed. So that was the status of the Aquatech. It's currently gone back and being redesigned to be relaunched. Let's look at the Lifetech LAA Occluder Lambra. And so this is a double membrane disc type device with a cover and an umbrella. It's an interesting device. It's based upon, as opposed to the Occlusion device, which is more along the Watchman lines, this is more along the ACP lines. The interesting thing about this device is it's got this anchor and it's got the disc that covers. The initial, and this isn't new, but the initial change that they made was that they thought that we could just pop this in and have the disc occluding, and they learnt, much like the Amplatzer device, that there is significant importance to the occlusion ability of the retainer, and so this became covered with a membrane in order to be occlusive. It's a fully recapturable umbrella. It's got a small delivery sheath. It's easily deployed. It's got a very neat technique where the anchors come out and engage the trabeculations and part of it, and the hub is recessed, much like the Amplatz, the amulet. So the interesting thing that I think the newer thing that's come along is there was the standard device, and I'm sorry I'm only pointing on this screen here, the standard device which has got a retainer and a disc, but the nice idea they came up with is what do we do with a Byford appendage? So they placed a small retainer with a large disc. So you can therefore deploy it in one side and not have to commit to a large device in the entire area. So that's an interesting development, and there it's got, as you can see, the disc is 12 to 14 millimeters larger than the retaining anchor. So what's the clinical evidence? This was also from TCT, this was a part of it was presented at TCT. So there are 3 clinical studies with over 300 human implants worldwide since October of 2012. There's the Asian FIM registry, which finished in April 2015 with 54 patients. There was a CE trial with 61 patients, which resulted in CE approval. And so this is new, and this is part of the update, was approved in June of 2016. There's the Chinese FDA trial with 157 patients, which they're now awaiting approval in this quarter. The US trial is under planning, and the interesting is that there are 2 planned trials. One is a randomized controlled trial against in anticoagulant eligible patients versus Watchman, and the second is an 800 patients with patients who are contraindicated. So they're looking to the 2 patient groups, one of the anticoagulant eligible patients and the anticoagulant ineligible patients. So if we look at just a very brief look at the combined results from the 3 registries, Asia, China, and Europe, we can see that there's 271 patients. This is the early data, and with an excellent implantation success rate. It seems to be very easy to deploy. There were no device embolizations, so this seems to be a very stable device, and there was the in general results were impressive. Let's move on to the Wave Crest. The Wave Crest these are the key design features. They look a bit like a Lifesaver's cap here. So it's got retractable rollout anchors. This is the initial device that was shown. The anchors are distributed around the perimeter. There's a PTFE occluder with some foam around it in order to improve it. There's distal, you can inject through the device, and there's 3 sizes. So the Coherix Wavecrest 1 study had 73 patients, and the results looked excellent. If you look at these results, they all really look very good. And it achieved CE approval in September of 2013. And then it was withdrawn from the market for redesign. So it doesn't really fit exactly with the results that I'm showing, but this is the progression of the device. So here are the Gen 1.2. This is the device of the 1.2, and this is the 1.3, which is the new device. So the optimization of anchors, the other thing that's happened is that you can see there are extra struts, so it's got a rounder and perhaps stronger retention capacity. It's got able to be recaptured more times. There's some extra foam coming around the side to improve the closure, and there was some significant sheath issues with scraping on the inside of the sheath, and so that's all been altered, and there's been a redesign of the valve and the sheath. That's been their progress. So the US trial is hopefully going to kick off with 12 1,250 patients between Wave, Crest, and Watchman, and this was presented at the TCT as being the anticipated to start of this quarter. Next device is the Cardia ultraseal. So this is another newish device. It's got two sections, very similar, as I showed you before, to the Lambra. You can see that this has got no occlusive capacity in the retainer. There's also hooks rather than anchors that swim out. So there's this occlusive lid. The occlusive lid, one of the earlier iterations was they increased the number of sails so that it would sit and occlude better. So this is very soft and neat and sits back and pulls back with lots of good angulation upon it, and so therefore it can be retrieved and positioned in multiple anatomies. So the total clinical data that I was able to glean was there was two old studies, one called UltraClose 1 with 10 patients with some 600 months of follow-up. There's UltraClose 2 study with 4 patients. And then there was a Canadian Special Access Registry with 18 patients, 12 of them published in a paper from Josep Rodez, and with one complication of an effusion. There was a Polish registry which was published as a letter to the editor with 6 patients, and of which 1 was a failed deployment. So of the total of 38 patients, CE approval was achieved in early 2016 or late 2015. Let's finish with the Watchman versus the Watchman Flex. So we're all very aware of the Watchman. We're all aware of the Watchman Flex. There were some very neat design changes. Certainly the concern of most of the people with the Watchman was that it was long and the distal end was a little bit intimidating. Is a little bit intimidating. We're all using that device still. And so the Watchman Flex was actually became a shorter and protected distal end. There are extra struts, so therefore it becomes a rounder device rather than more an umbrella type device. There's the recession of the screw, and certainly the distal end coming out looks much better. The one thing I just want to make a comment is that it's interesting, if you look at the Watchman Flex, it's a little bit reminiscent of the Plato device. And so we've gone actually from half a rugby ball to a soccer ball again. So it's actually got a little bit of roundness that's interesting. So what's happened is that this was rolled out, and then in March of last year, Boston Scientific implemented a voluntary medical device removal of all non-implanted Flex devices. And the reason was that there was an increased number of embolizations, 6 out of 207, and 2 were in the procedure and 4 were post-procedure. Then in October of 2016, that wasn't enough. Boston came out and implemented an addition, which was they were actually based upon a referral from the German competent authorities. They're asking for an additional TEs. So aside from the 45-day TE, they also recommended an update TE at 6 months and at 12 months because there was concern of the stability of the device. So having said all that, I'm going to ask you, do you think it's necessary to collect post-market data of more than 1,000 patients post-approval on all new LAA devices? So if you think it's necessary that there should be post-marketing assessment of greater than 1,000 patients, please put yes. That's put 1. If you don't think so, then 2, and 3 would be no opinion. That looks good. Can we have an answer? So there's lots of indications that we all need greater confidence in the devices that we're putting in, and that I think that's true. I think that we're all, can we have my slides back, please? I think we're all comfortable with the feeling of starting with new devices, but in view of the fact that we really see that the evolution of devices requires lots of data and lots of input in order for us to be safe in what we're putting our patients in. So I think that I'm comfortable with that answer. So I'm going to conclude and say that there are multiple devices that are evolving towards widespread clinical application. I think we all appreciate that the first iterations are often not perfect, and they may require multiple iterations to adequately overcome all the hurdles. Vigilant post-marketing surveillance may be necessary to identify suboptimal device or operator performance. And I thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, David.